Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, readers of all persuasions. It is I, Gayla, and welcome back to Book Uncorked and Caffeinated. And today we are going to be talking about all the books that I read in the month of June. So that number is actually 11. So, there's controversy on reading, listening to books, all of the things. I will say that I listened to all of the books in June. So June is a pretty heavy month for me work-wise. I'm an educator. June is end of the year, getting all my cases together, prom, senior trip, Regents Week, all of the things. So I'm not making excuses because I use audiobooks all the time, but I'm saying all of the books happen to be audiobooks during the month of June. And I'm thinking to myself, because of all the things that I had to do, and I was constantly in my car running to and fro. So let's talk about the 11 books that I read. So one of the books that I actually did by audiobook though was by Casey Mills, and I'm looking down because I have my iPad. I actually have the book, but it was just more convenient for me to actually listen to it with my ears, and that was Emergence and Ascendance by Casey Mills. So this was the third book in the series, The Collective. And this is about two people, the FMC and the MNC, both were in marriages that was like loveless marriages because of family obligations and all of those things. And then they both were out of those marriages and engaged in, I guess it's SMN, SMD, no, SDM, all of the things, BSDM. Obviously, I don't engage. I'll have it on the screen. But anywho, they did not realize that they were each other's partners because it started off as them not knowing who one another were, and they met in another capacity, and then they were in the bedroom together. And then they realized, although they like to engage in these type of sexual intimacies, they also actually liked one another. So this ended the series really, really good. I have all three by Casey Mills: Shadows and Whispers, Dawning and Emergence, and Emergence and Ascending. And all of them, ironically, I did with my ears. I read with my ears just because the time of year was and when I read them. And they're pretty thickums, and it has a lot of words on the page, and I don't feel any ways by it. So that's the first book that I read in the month of June. Then the next two books were, and ironically these are all series, the next two books was Capadonna 3 and Capadonna 3.5 that rounded out the season 2 of the Delgado family. So if you know the Delgado family, you know it started with Capone, continued with Capadonna, and Capadonna, dare I say, I was a little bit more touched than Capone. When I first read Capone, I thought Capone was touched. And then I read Capadonna and I was like, he's extra touch. So Capone and Capadonna were twins. Capadonna did a stint in prison, and now this is his story once he has left prison. So you learn about who he was before prison, his prison time, and post-prison time. And with the Delgado boys, they always find a woman that loves them through their traumas. And they just show up for their women in different ways and want to be better men because of their women. That then led me to Capri, and I'll have all these on the screen. I read the entire series: Capri 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, and 3.5, which I thought was super, super good. And that's 5 books straight back to back. I was in it to win it. I couldn't even read anything else because I was like, yep, download, download, download. The one thing that I do like about Capri's series, so Capri was the sister of Capone and Capadonna, and I think she was the youngest. And so, they treated her, she was like baby girl, but they also made sure she was not a part of that street life. She was. On paper, she wasn't. So no one knew she was a Delgado. And so she was able to pursue an education that also helped in their illegal activities. So she was an attorney. Even though she didn't practice as much on paper, she was able to be in rooms that they needed her to be in to make sure that they would be okay in the street. And I love Capri's story because Capri talks about kind of like an unforbidden love. She was married to one of their people, like in their, friend, family circle, street life. circle, and then they got divorced, and then she started dating and, you know, becoming a part of situationships with other people, and they were like, hey, you can't be going through our boys. And she's like, I'm not going through the boys, but these are people I like. But the one boy that she actually liked her and loved her back was Mir. And it was Capri's story, which was season 3 of the Zagato story, was definitely more of a love story. And I heard another book influencer say this, and I totally agree. You saw how their love developed. So Kwamir and Capri actually got together, and he loved her down, just like the Zagato brothers loved their women. Kwamir loved Capri, and the boys let him know, like, this is our sister, do her right. So this was a good read, and I'm glad I just kept reading, because Capri's story, if I had to pick, I really enjoyed Capri's story probably the most. And then I probably worked it backwards: Capri, Capodanno, and Capone. Like, Capone kind of set you up for what was going to happen, and then Capodanno and Capri followed through. And so that left me with the last 2 books. One was Parachutes, The Glide, which was Parachutes #2 by Terica Allen. And I probably didn't say who Capri and Capodanno author was, but you know, that's the Ms. Jacquel J, who can do no wrong. I'll put that out there. So then Parachutes by Terica Allen was the second one. So I read the first one. Did not know Terica Allen. She was a new author to me. I read the first one with my book club. The second one is the follow-up story with the FMC and the MNC. In the first book, you learned of their story, and they went through some really tough times as a couple. And then so part 2, The Glide, Parachutes, was about what happened, how they met, literally. Like, so how they, like, kind of like their story in totality is how they met, and it kept flip-flopping back and forth with how they met and what was going on now. And so the third one comes out in a couple of days, I think July 7th actually, and I guess that's gonna be the end of the story, because it's a trilogy. And at first I didn't know what the book was about, and I'm not going to spoil it, and I really enjoyed it. And so I just went on and looked up book 2, and it happened to be available, so I downloaded it and listened to it. And it's a really good story. It made me mad because the MMC really showed his tail. I'll give one little spoiler: he cheated, but it wasn't that he cheated, it was like how it was done, and he trying to justify it. And I want to normalize, I guess this is another spoiler, well, a spoiler for book 2, because I don't know what's going to happen in book 3. In book 2 they did break up, but I want to normalize women having a standard. Like, some people think she should have stayed, and I'm like, he ultimately cheated, but like I said before, it's not that he just cheated, it's the way it happens. And so I won't spoil that for you. You really have to read how he cheated, and I want us to normalize people moving forward, right? I didn't tell a lot of the story because the way book 2 ended, you'd be like, what? So I'm super interested in reading book 3. But we need to normalize women not, you know, taking the bullshit anymore. Like, standing up, having a standard, and saying, no, you messed up, it wasn't me, I do not feel like I need to support you in you trying to be a better person. I'm going to move on because you hurt my feelings, you hurt our family, and it's okay for me to leave you alone. And I want us to normalize that. Now, if you decide to stay, you can normalize that too, but I definitely want to normalize the fact that women can walk away and not feel guilty. So that was book number 10. And then I rounded out the month with this book. So this wasn't the initial book that I wanted to read for Juneteenth. I wanted to actually read Juneteenth by Ralph Ellison. And then I was listening to it. Like I said, it was a very hectic month for me. And so listening to it didn't do it any justice. And I was like, no, I need to put eyes on paper for this one. But the book, A Committee of One, How Faith and Action Equal a Purposeful Life by Opal Lee, came out during this time. And she's considered like the godmother of Juneteenth. And so never knew anything about this woman. And I consider myself a really good reader, a person who knows history. I taught history for 18 years. And I'm embarrassed to say this slipped through my fingers, didn't know anything about Opal Lee, and learned a lot about her and how Juneteenth actually started for us to have a national holiday. I think those who live in Texas would know it, but if you not engulfed in reading and going besides the history of your state and going beyond the history of your state and beyond the history of what United States sometimes tells us about our histories, you wouldn't know. And so in the efforts to not always be ignorant in this, I can't wait to actually this is the book. I actually do have the book, but I think she has like a list of like references and things of that nature, or there's some things she referenced in the book that I want to get into. Yeah, she doesn't have references, but she made a lot of references in the book, and I want to, you know, look up those things and, you know, become more educated about Juneteenth, because I think a lot of us know the premise and the basis of Juneteenth. That's when African Americans really got their freedom, but we don't know the history of how that was done and how it became a national holiday. So that was the book that I rounded up June with, and I actually finished June 30th. And so those were the 11 books that I read during the month of June. I had a very not a vast reading list, because I read like all of Jacquel J's books. I like read all of Capri's, which was like 5, and then Capadonna, which was like 2, so that's 5, 6, 7, and I read 11 books. So, you know, it wasn't a great variety, but the books that I read I really enjoyed. And so yeah, that's that. Those are the books that I read in the month of June. So now I'm in the midst of probably my next video, or the video after. The next 2 videos I will talk about my TBR for July or the summer. As you know, I've been doing like an anti or TBR, not TBR. And so I have been reading some books off of that list, but I've through this first 6 months of the year, I have truly succumbed to being a mood reader, and I'm okay with that. And so whatever I read in the summer is what I'm going to read in the summer. I've made all of this. It's not like I'm not going to read those books, but it's not going to be in the order that I would like to read them. I'm just going to read what I want to read in this summer, and I don't want to stress. So that being said, drop in the chat as usual a book stack, what you're reading, and then do all the other things like, comment, subscribe, share, like, subscribe, and do all the things, and I'll see you next video. Deuces.